Hey everyone, it's Ian Heller with Distribution Strategy Group, welcoming you to a great discussion today on creating clean and accurate product and customer data. We have a great show for you today. In a couple of minutes, I'm going to bring in our guests, John Murcott at Bridgeline and Sam Bob at Cavio. But first, let me do a couple of little commercials just to pay the bills before we get into the conversation. First, I want to invite you to our next Profit and Productivity Summit for distributors. This is going to be a fantastic event. We're looking at how to drive superior profits and how to drive superior productivity across a distribution enterprise. So we got some great speakers. We're about to announce a couple of new exciting ones very soon. We've got John Wyborg, who's the CEO at Stellar Industrial Supply. Alex Chalsofsky, everyone's favorite economist, who does fantastic updates on what's going on with the economy. Janet Zelenka, one of the most brilliant people I've ever worked with. I was on a board of directors with her. She's a former CFO and CIO. She did those jobs simultaneously at Stericycle, which is a big public company that got sold to Waste Management and Ascendant. Randy McLean, who's the president of Waypoint Analytics, will be talking about cost to serve metrics. And we got a couple of really exciting speakers who are CEOs at big distribution companies that we'll be announcing soon. But if you want to learn exactly how leading thinkers address opportunities and productivity and improve profitability, you're not going to want to miss this conference. Go to profitandproductivity.com for more information and to register. Also, we have our own software. We've got three components to it. We've got Customer Experience RX. This is Net Promoter Score software, i.e. customer satisfaction software. But rather than just giving you an overall score, it gives you a deep dive on exactly how you're performing across your enterprise. Employee Experience RX is employee engagement software, so you can make sure you're a competitive employer. And then Demand RX estimates sales potential by product line, by account, to help you drive the efforts of your sales and marketing personnel around where the real opportunities are among your customers and prospects. Okay, so let's get to the stars of the show. I'd like to welcome in Mr. John Murcott, who's the Executive Vice President of Products and Strategy at Bridgeline, Sam Bob, co-founder and Chief Technology Officer at Cavio. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing?
All good. Hey, Ian.
Good to see you,
So,
Ian.
yeah, good to see you guys too. So we're gonna have some fun today. I think we'll start with introductions. So, John, why don't we just go with you because you were first on the slide, and so do introduce in two ways. One, give us your background, and then two, tell us about HawkSearch and what you guys do for distributors.
Yeah, and I also, Ian, have a split personality. You may have seen the other John join as you were doing your intro. So sometimes I'm more product, sometimes more product marketing. But that
That's
was
okay.
just Jeremy, who you know. We've been to
Yeah,
many DSG conferences, and we love doing those events.
yeah.
Hopefully, one of
That's
them in Denver
the
at
more.
some point, Ian. At some
I
point.
I know you guys want to get out to Colorado. I understand, and we keep taking you to Chicago.
Exactly, exactly. But hello, everyone. Thanks again, Ian, for having me. John Murcott. I run products and strategy for HawkSearch. My background really started when the internet took off. I had started a company called FatWire Software. That was a web content management tool, so managing your website, similar to today WordPress and these other content management tools. That was acquired by Oracle. I actually did then go to WordPress for a while, so just did a lot with the internet. And one of the founders from those FatWire days is the CEO of Bridgeline. Bridgeline is the parent company of HawkSearch. And HawkSearch is a software company that powers the search bar on your website. And Ian, as you know, we focus on B2B. We have a lot of technology and capabilities around searching by SKU, but many times those SKUs are quite complicated. So we have a lot of features when someone's visiting your site on your e-commerce platform to find the exact product you're looking for. And of course, just like as the internet was kind of taking off when I started my career, now AI is taking off. And Ian, I know you and DSG talk a lot about AI and have those conferences. So that's had a huge impact, of course, on the ways that people search.
Yeah, that's great. Great description. And I like the name too, HawkSearch. I mean, who's got a sharper eye than a hawk, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That's great. Sam, over to you, my friend.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for having us here. Um, I started my career as an electrical engineer, and I think that was probably my first exposure to B2B distribution was on the buying side. I was searching for and buying products for projects that we were working on, and I then moved into the startup tech world as a software engineer. I've been interested in how we manage massive catalogs of products, and so landed at a number of startups that have been doing catalog management for very large catalogs. I led engineering and data science at Octopart, which was a search engine for electronic components, where we were managing, we were aggregating data from about 200 distributors, and managing in total about 200 million SKUs across those distributors, then coalesced down to about 40 million physical products. So a lot of interesting data and catalog management problems there. I was a founding engineer at Volition, which is a marketplace for industrial parts. And we built the PIM system and the search system while I was there. Again, fairly large catalog. I think they're also at about 20, 30 million products now in that system. And then about a year ago, I co-founded Cavio. My co-founder Derek has also been at a startup, Quartzy, doing a marketplace for life science and lab supplies. So together we have all this experience in how we can build really good technology for managing products, and we wanted to build a company. We wanted to build a tool where we can build an AI tool that lets B2B distributors, really focuses on the catalog management product data problem for B2B distributors based on I think what we saw as the major problems that exist at these previous startups, and the opportunity that we have with AI to simplify, automate, and ultimately make it a lot easier to activate your product data to really help sell more products. So we're providing a tool for distributors to acquire, organize, and then activate that product data.
Wow, you guys have some serious experience. Okay, good. So we've got a lot of people who have joined us. There's 70 participants on the call. Please feel free to join with your questions. I mean, that's the advantage of being here live versus just listening to the recording like a lot of other people do. So bring your questions for our experts today, and we'll run them by them. There is a Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. John, I want to start with you. It's funny because I've been a VP of marketing for 4 big distribution companies. And one of the things I learned over the years is your customers don't know what you sell. If you walk through a warehouse with a customer, even a longtime customer, it's pretty common at some point they'll point to some brand on the shelf and say, "Hey, when did you guys start carrying that?" And the answer is 1980. I mean, we've always had that, right?
Can you see my last email I blasted to you guys?
Yeah, right.
Right. Yeah.
And the distributors really make mistakes by assuming that their customers know what they sell, right? And they don't, as a result, put enough effort into making it easy to find that stuff, whether that's on, in their catalogs or on their websites. So, why do you think data is such a critical foundation for delivering great search and product discovery experiences?
Yeah, and it's interesting, Ian, as you know, yes, search is obviously the term that we typically use for this feature, but you're going to see more and more. Gartner and others are pushing this idea of product discovery. So on the one hand, you have to find it. Obviously, if I have the SKU, please, I want to get the right result. But the idea of discovery is understanding a little bit more of the relationships between the content, the data. This product is similar to this one, or this one is often purchased with this one. So on the one hand, you definitely need the underlying data, the metadata, et cetera, to find that right product. But on the other hand, if you could leverage that information through AI or other means, machine learning, et cetera, that creates a huge value. And maybe I'll just throw one more thing out there, Ian. You might think, well, AI, wait a second, like that creates a vector. Oh, I can find all these things. We call it concept search. So it really does fit well in the product discovery category. But what really works well is if you still leverage that structured data that's in your database and then help the AI answer by giving that structured data, then you have the best of both worlds. And if you don't have that good structured data, you're missing information, attributes aren't filled out, or they're inconsistent. You're just missing out. You still have a benefit. It's still better, but you're missing out a little bit. So even in the AI world, having that data kind of worked out, consistent, et cetera, has value.
So even with AI and machine learning, there's still a garbage in, garbage out reality.
Yes, it's a little better. It's a little better.
Sure.
But yes, you're right. It's still that same problem.
So Sam, then, I mean, what you guys do, I mean, you take in unstructured data and structure it basically, right? I mean, that's, so what is it that you see as the most common flaws in that, or the most common problems around this data, and how can distributors, do themselves a favor by getting it in better shape before they even engage with you guys?
I think that, in general, I think that you don't need to have perfectly structured data before you engage with an AI product. In fact, one of the powers of AI is that it's great at understanding large, complicated, unstructured documents. And so our approach is bring those authoritative sources of truth for what these products are, which ultimately, there's a big pipeline of product data. But ultimately, the source of truth for what a product is usually some document that a supplier generated. It's, some supplier built this product and an engineer wrote a data sheet for that product, or they wrote a spec sheet, or the marketing department at that supplier put together a bunch of information about that product. And currently the status quo is to, manually copy and paste into a bunch of spreadsheets that then go into other spreadsheets and go through a whole bunch of systems until that eventually gets to the buyer trying to make a decision. And so, I think AI provides this opportunity to bring those documents a lot closer to actually powering that buying experience. And so, I don't think, I don't think you should think that you really you need to get your PIM system perfectly organized before you can start working on an AI project. I think that really you can leapfrog a lot of the sort of the manual PIM cleanup that has been the status quo for a long time.
So, I mean, so are you saying you don't need a PIM necessarily, or that the PIM doesn't need to be built to the same level of rigor when it comes to taxonomy?
I think that, I think a lot of PIMs, when we talk to customers and we say, let's look at how your data, what your data process looks like. A lot of times they have a PIM, and we say, can you share your screen? Can you tell us, can you show us how you're doing this work? And 100% of the time, almost, they show us spreadsheets that they're using. They're not doing the data cleanup work in the PIM. And so the PIM is really the place where, it's a data governance tool. It's a bunch of rules. It's a bunch of validation. But the actual work is happening outside of the PIM in spreadsheets, on websites, that kind of thing. And I think that governance is useful. And I think a lot of teams add a bunch of process in order to try to manage a really fragile system. But I'd rather we invest in tools that give us traceability and give us insight into where did this data point actually come from. I think that's a piece that is often lacking, is not, it's not, does this match the schema we've described? It's, does this data point match up to some, source of truth? Why do we think this attribute is the value it is? Well, it probably came from some document, from some manufacturer's website or something. And if we record that, it makes the whole system a lot less brittle and a lot more fragile, a lot less fragile. And I think it lets teams move faster.
So, John, we've used the term PIM several times now. It occurs to me we may have people on the call who don't know what that is. So someone should probably define it. Anyone have an appetite to talk about what, I mean, it stands for Product Information Management System, right? but it is not a spreadsheet, right? So you guys probably interact with PIMS all the time, don't you, John?
Yeah. So I always kind of look at it as just a process. So think of it like a workflow. You certainly have those initial systems, which is probably the manufacturer that has all this information, and you eventually theoretically want to get it onto your website. So to take it from there onto the website's built on the e-commerce. So I'm moving slightly backwards here. But even before it gets onto the website, there's a way that you would want to take all of the data that's coming from multiple sources and then manage it, like that product information and management. Where do I want it to go? Maybe I have multiple sites, that type of thing. So typically it's sitting between the e-commerce tool, which is actually driving the transactions for purchases on your website, and those other sources of your partners and suppliers, et cetera, that are getting the data to you. And Sam brings up a good point. They're powerful and they add a lot of value. In some cases, it's not going to give you everything that you need. And I'll just tell you, in our world, one of the challenges trying to get past before, if you will, the e-commerce tool is, in our world, we need to know what the URL is to the page or the document. Documents are relatively straightforward, but for the page, that actual product page, and that's typically managed in the e-commerce tool. So the e-commerce tool kind of knows how the website works. The PIM kind of understands, how do I pull all this data together and then send it off to one or many e-commerce tools and other destinations.
Yeah, and I don't want to get too remedial here because I'm sure we have a range of experience in our audience. But for the people who are new to this, the process is as important as the tools because it makes you finalize decisions around how do I show an inch? Is it IN period? Is it IN no period? Is it INCH? Is it the little, the two little quotation mark things? And so it makes you standardize your taxonomy when you have and going through the PIM process is going to drive you to answer those questions and make those decisions so you can have better search results. So, John, going on with that, the part of what you're trying to get at here is personalization, right? And I know we may get to this more later, but real quickly, how do you use better product data to drive personalization? Why is that important?
Sure. And the bottom line always, Ian, is relevance. Are the results relevant?
Right.
And there's many ways to understand that. Once again, I will use that SKU example because I don't care who you are. If you put in that SKU, that's going to get returned. Obviously, you want that to be a relevant result. But what if I'm searching by the actual product name itself? And there's multiple ways to say, like, is that a relevant result? One, of course, is there like a keyword that matches what you were searching for? Obviously. Yeah. Is it something a little bit more AI centric, like in Sam's world, which is like, I made a vector search and I'm finding something more like product discovery, it conceptually found the match. But one other, and maybe you could say it's the most important relevancy aspect, is, did this person search for this before? Maybe they buy this product once a week or every month or something like that. So if I know who they are and I know they keep searching, for this keyword, whatever that product category or what have you is, and they always click on this product, guess what? Why don't I boost that product to the top when they're searching? And that's what's tailored to them. The challenge, and I know, Ian, you know a lot about customer data, is I have to make sure that the person who's logged into the site is the same person who may be doing these searches. So that idea of, in the B2C world, more like a persona or a segment, now I'm talking about like an individual or a company who's logged in. But when you know that information, then you can start leveraging the machine learning, because I know what these people are searching for, whether this is the actual individual. I know that Ian, when he searches for this keyword, he always clicks on that product. Next time he searches for that keyword, just put that product as the first result.
Yeah, got it. Okay. Sam, now I know you guys reduce the time and effort spent on manual catalog setup and your platform's designed really to use AI tools to ingest data faster and smarter and better and create catalogs more quickly. How exactly does that work?
Sure. When we've looked at how catalog management teams are currently working, a lot of those workflows are repetitive, reactive, and generally those results are slow to come. So the Cavio tool reduces that in a few ways and gets you product data that you can activate more quickly. So when we bring a customer on, we load their product catalog into our tool. And then the tool automatically uses AI to research all of those products and find all of the available information we can find across the web for those products. So we're focused on authoritative sources of information like supplier and manufacturer websites, data sheets, manuals, spec sheets, that sort of thing. And we attach those documents to the product. We can also bring in other data sources that our customers have access to, like supplier marketing portals, supplier data sheets that you're getting from suppliers, spreadsheets you're getting from suppliers, that sort of stuff. And we'll match that up with the products in your catalog. And then we provide an AI-powered tool that your catalog management team uses to, in a very flexible and powerful way, describe the attributes that you want to extract from that data. Lets you describe the format you want those in, what attributes you want to extract, and that could be data like attributes to power filters, but it could also be, we have a customer right now that's using the tool to write new, more compelling product names and descriptions that are going to be original to them. And then I think a piece that's important here is we're providing that traceability to where did all this data come from? How can I go through and look this value that we extracted? Like, how do I know that the AI didn't just make this up? Like that's not what we're going for here. Is stuff that looks good but is wrong. And so what you can do is for each one of those values, you can trace that back to what's the document that this came out of? Where in that document did it come from? And we're providing sort of ways to efficiently use your human time to review this data. So you're not reviewing sort of every data point. So things that we're really confident about, you can spend less time on. Things that there are questions about or a little bit less confident about, we're surfacing those in a way that's easy to review.
Interesting. Okay, got it. And John, how do you know how you're doing with it? I mean, what are the metrics that distributors should use to, I guess, know if they're doing well with their data management and what the impact is of that?
Yeah. Conversion is the simple answer. And you were in marketing, so conversions, you're thinking conversions on the emails you sent out, how many are being clicked. For us, it's when someone's doing a search, are they clicking within those results? And theoretically, if those were relevant results, someone clicked on it. Now, of course, other things happen after that, and it's continued to be managed. So that's the first one. And then the second one, the world we live in, the worst thing that can happen is nothing came back. And that's where, number one, you have to track it and just address it. But number two, where AI can start getting smarter, I was kind of commenting before, it's not just about search, it's about discovery. And that's where this idea that when you do the AI related search, the vector search, it's not just per se looking for those keywords. It's actually looking at the concept of what the request was. It could be a question as opposed to just a keyword. And once again, going to the Gartners of the world, what they're saying is that these types of search experiences, they won't be like the old way of putting in a keyword. It really will be more conversational. And it's more like you're asking a question. And of course, the system has to understand the concept of that question, the intention of it, and then match that to the data that's in your index.
Interesting. Okay.
If I can add,
go ahead. Yeah, you go ahead.
Ian, I think those sort of, sort of what metrics you're looking at. I think looking at on-site metrics, sort of conversion rate from one page to another or conversion rate to checkout, like those are really useful. Another way that I've encouraged customers to look at this is to think about the whole way that all of this product data is being used across your organization. This impacts your sales team as well. And including, in most organizations, your sales team ends up using your website to understand products. It happens.
Right.
And we've talked to customers who are seeing a lot more turnover on their sales team than they used to. And they have huge catalogs. And so getting a new sales rep up to speed and able to, uh, sell one product line over another or introduce a new brand to a customer, like that requires that sales rep has access to good data that they can discover what you're selling, and that they can make a compelling case. And I think there's an opportunity for both AI on your site, for AI improving your product data, and for your overall product data effort to have an impact beyond just sort of on-site e-commerce conversion metrics. And so it's worth looking at how can you measure how this is impacting your sales team and your overall sales beyond just that e-commerce channel.
Do you see the same thing, John?
Oh, for sure. And this idea too, like whether it's a portal, the one other aspect of this is, yes, it's great to get a good result. But let's just say it is a spec sheet and Sam lives in this world. Even if I told you 100%, you're the sales guy, let's say, and you're in the portal, and I 100% tell you that is the document that has the answer in it, let's just say, it's great, but now I still have to open up the document. It could be 3 or 4 pages long, and I wanted to know some dimension to who knows what, and I'm gonna have to pour through it. And I'm sure we all experience this when we use Google these days. It's not only that I put in a search and I get results, you see the AI start to actually answer what the original question was. And that's what we're spending a lot of our time in. Yes, I want to know what document it is, but can't you just kind of build like a little area underneath the search bar? We call it Smart Response, that actually answers the question that I asked about, and of course has a link to the document itself. And that's kind of that experience I was talking about, because then it could follow up with a question. Say, hey, don't forget to ask the customer about this if it's a salesperson who's using it. I'll just throw out one more thing in if we want to get more into it, but now you start getting into what a prompt is, and how the prompt can say, well, if the salesperson is looking at this, I want to change the prompt. I want to change the way the AI kind of answers the question. If it's my customer, I want to answer it completely differently, even though the underlying data is exactly the same. It's just, what is it with your wife? It's not what you say, it's how you say it. So it's the same thing. That prompt would address who is the audience looking at it, whether it's a salesperson or a visitor to your site.
And Sam, you mentioned sort of the need to avoid hallucinations. I mean, you didn't use that word, but how do you do that? And I mean, I know it's an ongoing struggle with LLMs, and they're famous for inventing things, but in these applications, this can be a real serious problem if you ask the AI to interpret the answer, give you the smart answer, as John called it. I think that's what you called it, John. But how do you manage to make sure that the AI is given the right answers?
It's a good question. There are a number of techniques in how you build the AI system that dramatically reduces the rate of hallucinations and the rate of errors.
Okay.
So that probably the biggest one is grounding the AI in authoritative data. So not asking the AI to make up stuff from its memory, but instead bringing authoritative documents on what these products are, and using that to ground these answers. And then we build a number of checks in to make sure that those answers are actually coming from those documents and are supported by those documents, and that those map back to those sources of truth. I think the other piece is, recognizing that your catalog management team, humans create mistakes too. And so there's really this question of, what's your current error rate? How good is your product data today? Well, the answer is it's not perfect. And so what we can do is we can make it a lot easier for your team to review data and understand where the errors are. So that's a bunch of tooling that we're building to help you understand things like the distribution of values across an attribute. So you can say what are the most common values, what are the least common values, are those least common values potentially errors, and do things like flag areas where we're the least confident in the data and give you an easy way to go through and review all of those areas where there's the system has the lowest confidence. So it's really it's about sort of one building a good AI system that doesn't hallucinate very often, and then two, putting your humans in charge. This is not a place where I think we should have a mindset that the AI knows better. We should instead think of this as a tool to accelerate humans and let humans focus on the things that we're the best at.
We've had a speaker at 2 of our 3 AI conferences named Zach Cass, and one of the things he talks about is how people have very low tolerance for technology making errors and very high tolerance for humans making errors. So one of the examples he uses is that autonomous cars are demonstrably safer than human drivers, right? I mean,
Sure.
overall, they're much, much safer, but they're not perfect. And so every time there's a crash with an autonomous system in a car, the social reaction is, well, this is why we can't let cars drive on their own.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, we've got 35,000 people a year dying from human caused, wrecks. And so
Yeah.
I think that's a really interesting observation, because it's like, well, the technology may be much better. I mean, there may be the occasional hallucination, but the tolerance for it is just lower than the tolerance for, well, of course, people made some errors in our product data. Sorry about that. It happens. There is sort of that dichotomy in how we have tolerance for error, don't you think?
Yeah, yeah. And I think going back to I think one of your earlier questions about sort of how can distributors get ready for AI, get ready
Yeah.
for using AI in their cat data projects. I think there's no substitute for learning by doing. I think the best thing to do is to start using AI in some capacity, whether
Right.
it's doing whether it's doing an experiment or a pilot with a service provider, or whether it's just, starting to use whatever you have available to you, ChatGPT or Copilot or Gemini. Use that in some experiment within your data process, uh, and that is useful to start all of us updating our intuition about what computers are good at and what they're bad at. And you'll
Right.
learn the capabilities, and you'll learn both, the capabilities and also the weaknesses. And this AI essentially like inverts our whole intuition for what computers are good at and what they're bad at. And
Yeah.
I think that we're all going through a process of relearning how to use this technology, how to use computers.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with that. And John, I want to get deeper into this smart answer that you talked about, right? Because you're right. I mean, what you're describing really is almost a hybrid between a search engine and an LLM prompt, right? Um,
Exactly.
you know,
Yeah.
and because yeah, I mean, right now people are used to going to a website and they search from some characteristics of some product to see if that distributor has it. They're they don't go to a website and go, into the you don't go into ABC Industrial Supplies website and go, here's the problem I'm trying to solve. Can you find this product? You don't do that. You think you have to have just the specs for the product. So is AI changing the game and how distributor website search is going to work in the future?
Oh, totally. And as Sam said too, maybe the next generation of salespeople are a little bit less familiar,
Yeah.
with your products, et cetera. And it does become generational. I was about to go really meta on you, Ian, on that last question.
Go
Like, we
ahead.
don't really forgive AI, but you forgive your buddy, kind of thing.
Right.
But it's because people of our generation, Ian and Sam, you're younger, but of our generation, we probably look at AI as like, it's a really intelligent computer. Whereas the next generation is going to be like, no, it's kind of like a person, not a person, but it's going to be
Yeah.
a little more personal. These movies, it's kind of like, oh, it's kind of like my girlfriend, kind of thing. And maybe we'll be more forgiving in that case. But you're right. The people who say like, well, when I'm going to search for this, I have to work backwards from the keywords that are in this database so that it'll find what I want. Whereas the next generation is like, what are you talking about? Just ask the question and you'll get what you want. And one of the ways that we position, I thought Sam brought up a good point with like the salespeople are using this stuff too. The way that we at HawkSearch look at the search bar, it's a salesperson. And what
Mm.
should a smart salesperson do? Should start asking you questions. Like that's what a salesperson should do. Ask what you need, what's not working, all that kind of stuff. And when the search experience becomes more like asking relevant questions based on what I think you're looking for, it really just kind of changes the whole way that we look at the way people search. And anyway, that's a meta level answer to your question, but I really think that's where everything is going here.
It's interesting you should say that because I love to make sales calls with distributor reps. So whenever I have an excuse, we're consulting with someone or something, I'll go make sales calls. And one of the things I look for is what's the question to statement ratio for the
Yeah,
sales rep? And I've been with sales reps and
exactly.
we're 3 customers in and they haven't asked a single question. And
Yeah,
and and so
exactly.
I think you're right. And that's interesting because in a regular search bar, Google doesn't ask you questions, right? But when you go into an LLM and say, here's what I'm looking for, a lot of times it will ask you questions. So it is much more like a salesperson than an old search bar
Well,
was.
also, and if you use Amazon, which I'm sure you do, like everyone else, you'll see this. It's beta. It doesn't always pop up. It's called Rufus, and that is their AI kind of search assistant. And
Yeah.
that's really the way they look at it. You go to any product page, it looks it. The AI looks at the description of the product and figures what would be good questions to ask. Like, are you going on a trip? Stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or
Right.
do you care about the recycle, can this be recycled, like that kind of thing, just to kind of spur you to interact with it a little bit more, just like a salesperson would. If you're asking about a certain type of product, I should really understand, like, what are you going to use it for, that kind of thing. It would help get the right answer.
Hey, Sam. So what should distributors be doing today to prepare for a future where automation increasingly handles their data operations? And what are some breakthroughs you think are coming in product data over the next few years?
Um, that's a good question. I want I actually I want to add to the previous to
Yeah, go ahead. Sure.
talk about just a little bit before I answer that. I think there's this interesting I love search. I love working on search engines. And I think there's this interesting tension right now where customers are going to demand better search on site, like John's
Yeah.
talking about, the ability to answer questions and solve problems. They're also going to be doing a lot of that problem solving off-site in things like ChatGPT, in these chat UIs, these that you don't have as much control over as a seller. And so that's leading to this rise of we all know SEO is important. It's leading to this rise of I think we're maybe calling this AEO, answer engine optimization. Like how do you make sure that your products and your services are well represented in ChatGPT and Perplexity and all these other tools? And I think that comes down to having product data that doesn't just communicate what your product is, but also communicates how to solve problems. How do you use these products? And so I think that, it's interesting to see like where's the future hold? Like, is more of this stuff going to happen on site or is more of it going to happen off site? I think the answer is going to be both, and ultimately you have to be prepared for both of these things.
All right. Yeah, right. No, I see, and I think so. Let's switch the whole conversation more towards where this is all going, and we got a bunch of distributors who are listening into this conversation, right? And all of them have websites. Probably all of them have search engines that they've invested in, and they have some kind of a product data exercise. Um, but it feels like the technology is moving faster than a lot of the customers probably are that you deal with, right? Um, so if you're a distributor today and you've got a product information team and you've got a PIM, or maybe Sam, to your point, you've got a bunch of Excel spreadsheets. Sorry, I just hit my mic. So where is this going, and how can I get ahead of it if I'm a distributor? So I want those smart answers, John, and I want to have my data my have those LLMs come to my site, Sam, because they get the more authoritative answers from me than my competitors. How do I organize and get ready for this new world? John, I'll start with you. You know, where's this going? And if you're presenting conceptually to a distributor, here's how you get ahead of the game. What is it that you're telling them?
Yeah, sure. And it's funny, I don't know if you could hear that in the background. I muted for a second. We're talking about all this AI and the future and conversational search. And I'm next to a firehouse and it still uses one of those alarms to signal that there's a fire. So it's like, wow.
Wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's back in
And I
time
still have to
150
mute,
years.
yeah,
Yeah,
these
right.
calls.
Right.
So anyway, these things take time and this is the future, but it will indeed take time. The interesting thing is, to specifically answer your question, Ian, is that to the point Sam was saying before, the value in that unstructured content, which used to be in the world of, 3 years ago, it's like, here's all my PIM stuff, which is the price, the description, the title, the color, and then here's the link to the PDF file. And I know in
Right.
Sam's world, I might not have that link. Can you find me a good PDF file? But whatever it is. And that in our index, literally in the system itself, was just the link to it. So it's like, hey, you want to see more? Click here. So just so we knew what the link was. But now it's like, why don't you scrape that, convert it to a vector, which basically says turn it into a way AI can do a search. And now you can start answering those questions. So now you take your more kind of structured PIM data, like the description, although often that description is pretty light, but still take that plus the other metadata, as I said, and all of this rich information that was in that PDF file and put it into a big, what's called an embedding, like just into a big way that AI could understand it. And now you do that search. The search is more like product discovery. It's not looking for keywords. It's conceptually understanding what you asked. Then you take the result that came back from the result. By the way, this is what Google does, and then says, give that to the LLM. And that's why I was commenting before, you might think it's a little ironic to say, like, why would you still want to use the metadata out of the PIM, even in this wonderful world of AI and smart answer and everything else? Is, well, if you did spend a lot of time kind of organizing things the way you think they're important, even though the AI might not, you could at least kind of, once again, go into the prompt idea, saying, hey, by the way, this is the way I organize my data, even though it understands all the concepts, et cetera, from all the data that was converted to those vectors, just to give it a little bit of a hint. Like, by the way, this is how we organize our data. So you still tell it, these are my filters and my metadata. Here was the result that came back. Now, can you please summarize that or compare the top two results? Or could you please answer what the original question was? Or could you do a follow-up question based on what you're sending? So first, make sure that the search itself is relevant. Then number two, you essentially hand off the results to the LLM with the prompt. Sometimes you're going to respond this way. Sometimes you're going to respond this way. And then you have like a new dialog box. And the question will be, are we still going to have like the search results below, or is it just going to be the answer that came back and we're just kind of conversing that way? Most likely you're still going to have the results because I want to see, maybe want to explore a little bit more myself, but probably that little, area underneath the search bar where you're seeing the answer written out or questions coming back or starting a thread in a conversation, probably more and more of the focus will be there, most likely.
Interesting. Good conversation. That's really interesting. So we got a couple of questions. I'm going to interject into the conversation. So Grace is asking, agentic commerce would be an interesting topic on how it will impact search engines and product data quality, as AI platforms will be allowing customers to buy directly through their platforms. So I think this means, can you buy through ChatGPT, right? Poor data will lessen your chance of AI showing your products. That's interesting. Any takes on this? Sam, you want to start with that one?
Sure. The answer is, I guess, yes.
Yeah.
There's the predicting the future part of that, which is how much AI agentic commerce is going to happen.
Right.
I think probably some, is that going to dominate B2B buying? I'm not sure.
Right.
But will poor data get in the way of being effective on those platforms? Yeah, absolutely. probably more practical, or like a signal we can look at today to anticipate that is one of our customers recently told us that I think 60% of their sales are now going through e-procurement platforms.
Mm.
And those more and more, instead of the sort of more traditional way is that you'd load up a view of their e-commerce tool within sort of an iframe within the purchasing tool. Like this is sort of punch out type stuff.
Yeah, right.
But then the sort of newer way that like Ariba and Coupa are doing this is as a seller, you just expose an API and they are essentially a search aggregator. They are, searching happens in the purchasing tool. And their opportunity to get shown is the query comes into their API, and they send some products back, and then that purchasing tool does something. It is a black box. And they're interested in how do we optimize our product data to give us the best chance to show up in those purchasing tools. And it looks a lot like how you do SEO for Google. And I think it looks a lot like how you're going to do agentic optimization for buying on ChatGPT or whatever
Yeah.
the future holds. But ultimately, it comes down to having really good data for your products and covering all of your products. Not covering just the products that are selling, but also covering the data that are on those long tail products.
Yeah, that's interesting. I actually hadn't thought about this before, buying through an LLM or some other whatever, other AI technology. So there's an additional layer between the seller and the buyer, and the product data. How you get the product data in there matters. Do you guys think about that, John? Is that something
Oh
you
yeah,
work on?
I live in this world. So there
Okay.
is a technology, and a lot of the AI companies, et cetera, are very excited about it. The acronym is MCP. That stands
Yeah.
for Model Context Protocol.
Hmm.
And as Sam was saying, in the end, if you want to communicate with the system, typically it's an API, obviously. Like we live in that
Right.
world, hit the API and it returns something. But if I could wrap an LLM around the API, and I tell the LLM through this MCP process, like, here's the endpoint, these are all the variables it takes, these are all the restrictions around the variables, like this is a text field, this is a price, price can't be more than, you explain it exactly. Now I can just talk to the API. It understands what you're asking, and it knows how to form the API request to make make the request to the system. And then when the results come back, it can present it in very interesting ways. It could present it as a table, it could present it as a chart. And then where it really gets interesting is, what if it's not a human asking that MCP server for the information? It's another agent that's making the request. And it also has an LLM. So the request came in because we're low on this quantity. It knows that because it's monitoring the API that tells you the quantity of each of your products, or whatever that endpoint may be, that API. And then it knows, oh, I'm going to ask this agent, this MCP server essentially, to get the info. It gets the results back, and they're kind of communicating back and forth. So at first it could help humans. And a lot of times when you think of like Copilot, when you're inside your tool, that's essentially what's going on. It's just like a LLM wrapped around an API that's connected to whatever your system of record is. And it's a baby step. It's certainly not like full agentic e-commerce, but it's a baby step in that direction.
Interesting. Okay, good. And Keith wants to know, and I think this is probably directed at you, Sam, but either one of you can jump on it if you want. Can we clean inventory data that has years of improper maintenance, no vendor part numbers, no UPC, et cetera? And before you answer, every distributor I talk to sort of confesses quietly about how terrible my product data is.
Yeah. Um, I think that the question is so in a lot of ways, I think we're getting at like maybe we'll sort of do two levels here.
Yeah.
Uh, if you if we're talking about I can figure out what this product is, but all I have is that 30 character ERP description and a part number and like nothing else. That's super common. We see that all the time. And that's a really great place to start from because we've got a part number, we've got a supplier, we've got 30 characters that kind of describe what this thing is, but like there's no image, there's no description, there's, you know, nothing, right? We can add a lot of data to that. If we're below that level, if we're at like, what is this product? If you as a human have trouble looking at this and figuring out like what this is, which happens, right? There's
Right.
definitely there's definitely there. The AI is not magic. We can take a stab at it,
Right.
and our tool does a good job of surfacing, hey, we looked at this, we tried to figure out what this was. There wasn't a part number, but there was enough of a description, or that, you know, that little ERP description. There was enough of that we think it's probably this. And we can surface that so that you know that, hey, we're not 100% confident about this. And then you can go from there. You know, but obviously, like, you know, if there's really nothing, if a human can't look at it and figure out what it is, you know, in a lot of cases, you know, the AI also can't. But it's worth trying, because you know, we will surface when we have done well, and when we haven't.
So, okay, good. And this, so Douglas wants to know, what is a good example of how a distributor puts PIM into their org chart? So, John, maybe start with you. I mean, I don't know if, you don't work for distributors, but you work with a lot of them. So maybe a little bit broader version of that question is, what does it look like to organize well as a distributor for product data? Where does it fall when you work with a distributor and it goes just really well because the distributor was ready to go and they, had good processes and organization? What did that distributor look like in
Yeah.
terms of how
Well,
it's
if
structured? Yeah.
Yeah, and if we're talking about the org chart, and admittedly, Ian, we're heavily focused on the merchandising team and the
Yeah,
e-commerce team. So
sure.
that's where I always see it. But you might say, yeah, because you're looking at the keys underneath the lamp, and that's where we always are. So that's where I think all of those are. But I can just say from my experience, from an org chart perspective, that's typically where it is. Now, there's always going to still be IT because there's going to be
Right.
integrations and, that type of thing. But we typically see it within the merchandising / e-commerce team, if that's the underlying question.
And they have, yeah. And there's someone
Um,
who's, go ahead, Sam. Go ahead.
Going up a level there, I think that it is best placed, that merchandising, like the PIM team, your merchandising or catalog management team is usually handling, or is you interacting with that PIM system the most, and running that process. I think that it is most effective when that organization sits within, I think the most common I've seen is marketing, or sales, uh, so that so that you recognize as an organization that that product data is about your go-to-market process. You're not doing product data for the sake of having more data. You're doing product data so you can sell more products. And I think it's important that the people working on product data roll up to some organization that has those goals,
Yeah.
and can say, like, we're trying to run this new campaign, and so we need this data for that. And I think pushing that process over into IT or ops or something reduces that leverage a little bit.
Right. So both of you are saying it probably belongs in merchandising or marketing, or maybe e-commerce, depending on the nature of the company,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's important to point out. I mean, these PIMs don't just power e-commerce, right? They power the ERP transaction processing as well. So if you've got customer service people, they may be looking at product descriptions on the ERP screen, not on the e-commerce screen. Okay. And Douglas says, "Thank you, great insight. Awesome." Okay. I think we're gonna wrap up now. Any last thoughts about where this is all going, or any advice for our listeners before we wrap up today, John or Sam?
The only other additional is a minor detail, but to Sam's point with your question, like, what if my data, we don't have a lot of,
Yeah,
information, maybe a
right.
really light description and other things. One thing that we see a lot of success with, but there's all the caveats of, you have to explore it and try it, is the image itself. If you have the image and maybe not a lot of other metadata, there are tools, the models that will look at it and say, oh, well, that is, this kind of product and extract it that way. So sometimes there's valuable data, obviously, in the spec sheets.
Right.
Sometimes there's valuable data in the image itself. And we've been doing more and more around searching by image, by uploading the image or describing the image. And whether that's to find the product or as you're pulling out as much descriptive information as you can.
Yeah, I think that's
Great.
interesting. It's like these AI tools are giving us sort of the power to, if you don't have the image, we can take the little description you have and go find the image and attach that. Or if you have the image, we can underneath
Right.
that and go find the
Yes.
description and attach that. And sort of,
Yeah.
we've got a lot more connection between these different data points on a product than we used to.
Yeah.
Awesome. Oh, here's one more question before we wrap up. Is your solution available only in English? What about Spanish for Mexico? How do you handle foreign languages, I guess, is the question.
I'll jump in first, Sam, if you want to cover it. So one of the things, I know I just throw out a term like vector, and some people are like, what are you talking about? It just essentially means, believe it or not, these models are converting the concept of a sentence, a paragraph, a picture into a series of numbers, which is just based on that model. And if you use what's called the sentence transformer, and this Spanish creates the same numbers, right? So in the end, you could ask, I do this demo all the time, you could ask the question in Spanish, that smart answer we were talking about before will answer in Spanish, but the underlying content is actually, excuse me, is actually in English. So, I know obviously people use translation tools as well. So the underlying content would be translated, and that's fine also, of course. But you could have these AI-based, more kind of conversational search experiences in up to 50 different languages. It's not just Spanish, but I have a lot of developers, in using Chinese and Hindi, and it's like, yep, you get the same exact results back.
Yeah, I think on our side, we're only a year old, so we don't have we haven't built a bunch of features to handle multi-language support at this point, but the AI models really have incredible support for translation between languages and understanding the semantic meaning of content across language. We're working with a customer right now based in Canada, and they're doing, they're working on attributes and descriptions in both English and French. And so, there's a lot of power here.
Awesome. All right. One more minute, people. Please hang on. Please join us for Elevating the B2B Customer Experience. That's on August 20th. This is Wholesale Change, our podcast and webcast. He's a principal at Unified Commerce, principal of Unified Commerce Strategy at Perficient. That show will be brought to you by Epicor and Helixia. So thanks to those two sponsors. And then this is one of our most popular events. We have a quarterly update, Economic Crossroads. And for the first time, we're combining that with an M&A trends in distribution. So the economic side of this will be discussed by, or be presented by Alex Chalsofsky, fantastic economist. You're going to love listening to him if you haven't heard of him before. And we are working with a couple of M&A presenters right now, so we'll be announcing that one too. So this will be a really interesting event to get an overview of what's happening with economics and M&A in the distribution industry. That is all for today. John, Sam, thank you so much for a fascinating discussion. It was great working with you. To everybody else, thanks for joining us. We'll see you on the next event. Bye now.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks.